Okay, so I promised you we're going to be talking about composition. Composition is number 3 in our list of 12 concepts that you have to know about plein air painting. This is a brief overview. When I bring in something like this, I do a lot of research to find out, so what are artists talking about composition and things? And there are things that I understand about composition are a little bit more advanced, a little bit more kind of what you think of when you're contemplating all the extremes about composition. If you open up most of the art books that you'll see, you'll have like a letter H composition, or an S composition, or an O composition. Composition basically means how things are organized in your painting. The basic rules of organization is the law of thirds. And the law of thirds basically just tells you, if you cut your painting into thirds and thirds and thirds, there's your central focal point. That's what I have taught over the years is the golden mean. And the golden mean basically is a little bit more complicated version of the law of thirds. What you do is you take the length of the overall canvas. In this case, it's a 12 by 16, so that's 16, and you divide it by 1.618. So it's 1.618. So horizontally, yeah. So when you divide this length by 1.618, you'll actually get a measurement. It will be somewhere around there. Now, normally I use a calculator to figure this out. Because when you get a calculator and you divide 1.618 by 16, that's the measurement you'll get. And without clearing your calculator, you type in 1.618 and you get this measurement. And then you type it again, you get this measurement, 1.618. And then you type whatever's left over with 1.618 and you get this measurement. And then you divide it by 1.618 and you get this measurement. And then you have to apply the same measurements over here on this side. And if you notice, these first two are wider and these ones get a little bit closer together. Then you take the height of your canvas, divide 12, which is this case here, by 1.618, and you get that measurement there. And then you take what's left over, divide that by 1.618, you get this measurement here. You divide that by 1.618 and you get this measurement. You divide that by 1.618, you get this measurement here, and then you flip that and you get this, this, and this. So that's basically the golden mean lines, or divine proportion, golden ratio, Feminazi circle, all of those Greek terms and philosophies, and so they've been used throughout history. In fact, one of the reasons why we love Greek architecture is that a lot of it is based on this golden mean. A lot of the Renaissance buildings were based on this too. A lot of churches are built on this. It's a very common architectural design. It actually is the measurement that's found in nature. So you can almost take anything in nature and divide it by 1.618 and you'll actually see the relationships that things have to their self. So if you look at a nautilus shell, the nautilus shell is a shell that kind of looks like this. Okay, and then if you cut that in half, you end up with something that looks like this. Every one of these divisions here can be divided by 1.618 to the overall circle, and you'll get all the divisions that you see in a nautilus shell. When we look at a tree, you divide by 1.618, you'll actually have the first layer of branches, then the second layer of branches, the third layer, and you know when you do a tree how the branches get closer and closer together? That's divine proportion. That's what you see happening in nature. If you look at a hand, first measurement here, second measurement, third measurement, you'll see that this measurement plays out all throughout nature. And so the theory is, with ancient artists, is if they would use 1.618 to design their paintings, they should end up with a real comfortable feeling overall composition. So by taking your length and divided by 1.618, taking your height divided by 1.618, and then forming a grid this way and this way, connecting all of these spots in here, you would end up with a grid in here that is what we call divine proportion. Just the first two measurements that we started off with, you would end up with what they would call the law of thirds. Kind of. It would look like it. But if you're doing golden mean measurements, the law of thirds actually is out here somewhere. The divine proportion is actually a little tighter. Why is that important? Because when you're doing composition, you want your main focal point to be somewhere in this third. These rules of composition are not set in stone. There are really, really great paintings where the main focal point is out here somewhere.
Doesn't that break the rule? Don't put your focal point smack bang in the middle.
You're not supposed to put anything smack dab in the center. Although there are thousands of paintings out there that break that rule all the time. So a lot of times when I talk to students about composition, I use the word consideration. Because there's probably, for every rule, there's probably 1,000 ways to break that rule. So knowing some of these things is just to have it go through your brain. But the reason why you want to have your main focal point in this area is because that's how we see. So if I tell you, hey, look at me, right? You're not looking at me like this, off to the side. You're not. In fact, I would say that pretty much if you're going to take a picture of something, you pretty much sit whatever you're going to take a picture of in the middle of your frame. And then you go, oh wait, my art teacher told me never do that. So then you move it over to the right or to the left. How many of you actually feel that? Right? To compose, yeah. You go, well there he is. Huh? Yeah, so and even your phones now have that. And then you can line things up. So you just move the object somewhere to the left or right. But the thing is, I'm still, if I'm trying to look at you, which is like dead center, I wouldn't focus here and have you. Usually the center focal point means that your eyes are fixated on that. And so if you put the object in this area, chances are you're going to reproduce the human experience more so. Because our eyes don't adjust like our brains do when it comes to looking through a camera lens. It puts things in the center and has no problem with that. So that when you compose a painting, you kind of consider that. But it's a consideration. But that rule can be broken a lot. Why would I have all these other measurements up here? If I were to complete these grids, here and here, and here, and here, every one of these intersections forms actually the same ratio as the overall canvas. So this ratio here is the same ratio as there, is the same overall ratio. This ratio here is the same ratio as that. If I choose this and this ratio would be the same ratio as out here. So we'll have like a lot of this repeated lines that are going through our canvas that actually are very pleasing to look at. When we look at the Nautilus shell, it's very nice to look at that. In fact, if we would say if you disrupt the golden mean, you would know something is wrong. And sometimes when you sit at the beach, believe it or not, the sound of the waves are following a golden mean pattern. And what happens when a boat all of a sudden cuts across that, and you have a wave that goes because the golden mean pattern has been broken, you notice it. You know, something is odd in nature. So the theory is if we're going to do a mountain and that's the center focal point, put the main mountain in here, then I'm going to put a tree. And it's not a bad idea to put that tree on this golden mean. Now oftentimes you're not just going to stick one tree and you're going to put in another one. So you're going to put another one in here, and then another one, maybe here, and then as it gets closer, these start getting closer. Now some of your art teachers have said, oh my God, look at your trees, they're all separated exactly the same. Almost look like fence posts. That's a common mistake that students have when they're doing their trees, is that they all are evenly spaced. But if you actually put all of your trees on different means out here, your trees will never be lined up. They'll always get smaller and smaller as they get towards the edge. Same thing with your rocks. You can actually take, if we finish this off, sometimes you could take this whole rock and put it right into this, one of the golden means. If you're going to put another rock in, consider sticking it on another golden mean. If you're going to put in a log, consider having that log start from this golden mean and cross over to that golden mean. In fact, if you actually put in a line from this golden mean to this golden mean, not only are you having kind of an interesting perspective thing, but now you have an eye magnet that moves the viewer down. Now I'm going to tell you how I kind of construct things at times using just the golden mean. So what I'll do is I will actually look for my center focal point, and I will actually make all of these sections hit the golden mean in my composition. Then I actually would take this and this, start my golden mean here, and I would do the next line from this to this, and then I would start from this to this, wherever this golden mean comes together here, and then I would take this line to this line, and this line to this line, this line to this line, and before you know it, I'm actually creating a circle. Every golden mean pointing to another golden mean, creating movement in my painting. So no longer a landscape isn't just sitting there, it's actually moving. And to cause it to move without any obvious distortion is kind of complex, and it's kind of a trick that I play with people. So underneath my overall design, I have this swirling golden mean composition going on that the viewer is totally unaware of. That makes the painting move a little bit more. Depending on how I work my edges, which is again one of our concepts for painting, is whether or not the viewer is going to move fast or slow throughout this whole scene. So there's a lot that can happen in the composition that has nothing to do with L's and zeros and S's and all that stuff. This is the actual structure of the overall composition.
How many artists do you think actually use that?
Very few even understand what I just explained. And then you have the Feminazi Curve, which basically does the same thing, which is a line that goes and it connects all of these golden means, comes down and around, and then comes across here and then hits the golden mean, and it'll come around into this spot right in here. In fact, if you buy Masterpieces canvas, a lot of people will actually see this their entire life. There's a little Feminazi's spiral, and you'll see that on a lot of artistic stuff. They will not have a clue of what that is. Oh, the Feminazi. You know, when I first learned the golden mean, nobody was talking about it. I mean, in 1980, art education was so poor that, and it's not their fault, the teachers sucked because their teachers sucked. That whole realm of abstract art just ruined the art world. And so now there are artists that are trying to rediscover some of these old rules that the old masters had and go, hey, there is some value to this stuff. But most instructors have never been taught this because their instructors didn't know. So you'll actually see that on there. That canvas there is actually a golden mean canvas. Why is he producing a golden mean canvas? Because I told them to. I told Masterpiece Canvas 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, that they should produce a golden mean canvas. If you go to museums and you look at the old master paintings, the proportions that they have on their paintings is this proportion. Well, when you look at the Greek art that was done 2,000 years ago and you go, oh my God, they knew a lot about science and art and mathematics. In fact, a lot of mathematics was invented that we still use today during that period of time and in the Renaissance. So anyway, this overall size is 12 by 19. This is considered to be a golden mean canvas. And I told Masterpiece Canvas 15 years ago, I said, if you want to produce some interesting sizes, reproduce the old sizes that the old masters used. And I guarantee you, if you go to any museum in America and look at the American painters, even the old French Impressionists, you will see this proportion over and over and over again, especially on horizontal landscapes. Now, is this purely by accident that this, is this just a fluke that the canvases should be the same? Or is there something to that? Think about what has just happened in the last 15 years with television sets. Remember old television sets were square?
Yeah.
Now what do they look like? Do you remember back in the theaters they had CinemaScope? What were they trying to reproduce? They were trying to reproduce the overall effect of that. In fact, this concept is so used today in computers that you even have it on your phones. So if you would paint a painting on a golden mean canvas, wouldn't you be actually with the tide of what technology is using? And why is technology using this? Because they have found through research and study for thousands of people, because they're interested in selling product, that this is what people would buy. Think about, would you buy one of those old television sets again? Abstract artists were dictating, because there wasn't no standard sizes. These were the standard sizes. This is what people used. And then abstract art came in, and abstract art said, the hell with all the past rules. We're going to do some new stuff. And they said, oh, that codgy old dimension. No, we're going to make them square. We're going to have 20 by 24. There is a measurement, 24 by 36, 2 by 3. That's probably the only one that still kind of stays within the golden mean structure. But all the other ones are actually more contemporary canvases. Fortunately, some companies are starting to catch on that this is a much more pleasing format. So you cannot consider composition without considering your overall dimensions of your canvas. Okay?
Can you get frames for this size?
You have them made. Because the quality of your work from now on will be so awesome that you can't see your work anymore. After taking all my workshops, you will be extraordinary. In fact, you couldn't even contemplate using a ready-made frame. Wouldn't that be extraordinary? Why dumb down the possibilities by having standard frames that are odd sizes when you could have the possibility of making really great work and have custom-made frames? Now imagine if you're in a show and you've got all these beautiful, pleasing-looking dimensions. You might sell way better than anyone else and the viewer doesn't even know why, but they like your paintings because they feel more comfortable.
Interesting.
So yeah, so you can't talk about composition without thinking about the overall dimension of your surface that you have. Getting back to our law of thirds, That's pretty good. Law of thirds, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, why do we go through the exercise of having a divine proportion golden mean? Should you lay that out on every painting from now on? No, probably not. You could try it, do it for a while. But if you follow any rules to that degree, you may find yourself not enjoying painting anymore. It's not spontaneous. When do you use that information and all the information that I share? Is when you run into problems. Why is this painting not working? How can I get this painting to look better?
I do it automatically.
Some people do it automatically. You should do it automatically because it's the golden mean. If it's the natural way that you look at things, then you should be doing it automatically.
No, you taught me to do
I've taught, well, you have a good teacher. Okay. Not everybody has one, though. Pat has to call me all the way from North Dakota. Travel cross country. Okay, so we break into thirds. Now, a central focal point should be within the middle third, correct? Now, this is something you should consider too. If your main object is on the right-hand side of your central focal point area, let's say that's a vase or something like that, then the light should come from the left.
Why?
The reason for that, the longer that the light travels through the painting, the more interesting it becomes. If you put your subject matter over here, the light only travels this far. Now again, these are considerations. If your central focal point is on the left, if your central focal point is on the left, like this, your light should come from the right. Across the canvas. Because light is energy. The longer a light can travel through a painting, the more it can embody the interest of the viewer. Meaning that if the light comes in and hits something and comes back down again, the rest of the painting isn't affected. So oftentimes the whole painting ends here. And anything you do over here has no significance. If you put this over on this side here, the involvement of the painting is much larger. When we talk about eye magnets, which basically is what you're trying to do is create energy and movement. Remember that spiral that I put into the painting? Well, if the light comes here, bounces onto here, and goes back into here, it's creating interest around the central focal point area, which is here. You don't want to create a bunch of interest over here because our central focal point's here. So where you put your object in relationship to the light is very, very crucial. Another idea for dealing with your composition and your central focal point. Is it better to have your central focal point on the left-hand side of the canvas or the right-hand side of the canvas?
Depends on if you're left or right-handed.
Yeah.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. Huh?
Does it make any difference?
Well, I don't know. The theory is that it could. I'll run it through and see if it does for you. When we as Americans, okay, or Europeans or Western, we read from left to right, which means that we naturally come into a picture this way. Now, there are some countries that read from right to left. And then there are some cultures like Japan and China, they read up and down. Now, just for a second, think about Japanese art. Aren't they more like scrolls, like up and down? Because they're kind of it's like, wow, where does he get this stuff? It's like, common sense. If you look at ancient, it's like, yeah, it's like, but it's not. It's just common sense. So I said, if I make you think like an artist, you'll be one. But you got to know what you're thinking about. You know, you got to know what that is. So, when the right-hand side of the canvas is actually stronger because you can move in here. So we'd even have light coming in this direction here to hit the object over on the right-hand side. When you open up a newspaper, what's the most expensive side of the newspaper to advertise on?
That's right.
Did you know that?
Yes.
I know it just because you can see, in my mind's eye, I can see.
Most of your advertising is on the newspapers like this. It's on the right-hand
3,
side.
7, and 9.
In fact, when you think about magazines, how do you read magazines?
Reading from the back to the front.
Isn't that weird?
I do,
Isn't that weird?
yeah.
Which page are you looking at?
Well, the right side,
The right side.
the back, and then,
When I advertise in a magazine, I always ask for the top right-hand corner.
that's where I saw you.
Yeah. And the gal who was doing the ad, she goes, we never have artists tell us what's part of the page that we want to. 'Cause most artists don't know this stuff. When you think about Jay Leno, remember Jay Leno? Jay Leno was on the left-hand side of the stage. Remember the guy, the Afro-American guitar player that he had on the right-hand side? At times, he almost stole the show. All he had to do was crack up, and the entire audience went over there. Jay Leno chose the wrong side of the stage. Now look at David Letterman. David Letterman was on the right-hand side. His sidekick was nothing but a sidekick and almost a joke. He never took over the stage because David understood that commanding the right side of the stage was important.
Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson was always on the
Yeah.
right,
on
too.
the
Yeah.
right-hand side, yes.
And Leno took over for Johnny.
And flipped it. But the thing is, that's psychological. So you can see old style, you know, kids who do advertising and stuff who don't understand that. You'll drive by a billboard and you'll see the product they want to sell on the left-hand side and it's not powerful. When you have the product on the right-hand side, it's much more powerful. So if you want to do a comparison, you always want your product on the right-hand side. So it makes really important that if you're going to do a still life, it's better to put your objects on the right-hand side with the light coming from left to right. The light comes in left to right because that's the way we come in. So it feels good to come in this way, the light come in. And then we hit this, boom! Right?
Yeah.
Boom, we feel good. And this bounces back and we start creating energy. The light brings us in, this reflexes out, and we're starting to develop interesting compositions. Now, yes, you can have an L shape in there. You can have an S shape in there. You can have even a central focal point that's a big O. But all those are just little considerations in the overall picture. How you arrange your subject matter has a lot to do with it. Now, we can chunk compositions into 4 basic values, and knowing where you're going to put your tree, your lake is crucial. And then you can actually, using this format, chunk in a gray, chunk in a darker gray value, chunk in whatever, and base your overall composition in that. And most of the time when you look up compositions, they will tell you basically what you want to do is take the elements that you're looking at, break it up into 4 or 5 different value families. And you do that by squinting. And you can break those sections up and arrange them like puzzle pieces so that you can get an interesting array. And those are just the chunking part of it. But how you work with those chunks and the objects are really crucial. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Now, do you want to sit there and apply all these rules to everything that you do? No. It's good to know these things. Just like I teach for 3 weeks, I have my students do the golden mean exercise, and then I tell them, forget it. It has no value whatsoever. The only time you ever want to use any of these things is when you are actually running into a problem. And then you start pulling out your tools saying, what is missing? What's wrong? Why is this not working? What are the things that I can use? That's when you use all of this other information. But don't sit out there and mull over it. But it's kind of a good thing to kind of know.